The other railway scrapyard was overcapacitated. As a result, the managers had made a business proposal with the Fat Controller to transport scrap to their facilities on Sodor to have them broken up there. Although he worried about the sentiments of his engines, his hands were ultimately tied due to many industries closing down for the winter months, and so it was arranged. The majority of these trains consisted of broken up rolling stock and engine parts, but sometimes shells of engines would be waiting at what the engines like to consider the limbo. The engines never liked these runs. They felt as if they were being looked down upon by the rusted remains of what was no more. Rosie felt these testaments one evening as she arrived at Barrow in Furness to find a large engine waiting for her. Its frames were rusted, and despite there being a smokebox door where the face once stood, Rosie still felt an unsettling glare as she was coupled up to it. The journey was uncomfortably silent, akin to the noise made by the rusted wheels as she made her way to the scrapyards. When she arrived, she left the engine at one of the deep sidings and left for home. Next morning, however, she was brought some interesting news.
Gone?
That's right. When the workmen went to see the conditions of the engine, it had seemingly vanished, as he put it. The engines began to feel uncomfortable.
Maybe it was moved to another siding.
Perhaps, but no other engines were in the area, and it couldn't have been scrapped with such urgency either. Procedures in the scrapyard don't work like that. Perhaps you may have shunted it somewhere else by mistake. It was rather late.
No, sir. I remember exactly where I shunted it. You can check with my crew and the scrapyard manager too.
And I shall. But even so, it was late, and they might have all been tired as well. And with that said, the Fat Controller walked away. Rosie felt miserable. The other engines were cross and doubtful.
Might have been tired as well. Has that man lost his senses? There is clearly some paranormal activity going on.
Henry hadn't forgotten his incident on the line near Harwin Lake.
That wasn't a ghost, it was a fogman.
You don't know the full story, little James.
With rising tensions, Rosie felt it best to start her work. As she shunted in the yards, she tried hard to think where the engine could have gone, but she couldn't think of a good answer. And despite the efforts of the Fat Controller and the other engines, the missing engine remained missing. That was, however, until that night.
It was big and cranked while it whistled loudly as if it was screaming. Whatever that thing was, I don't fancy seeing it again. Someone else can pull the mail tonight. But how could they have moved on its own? Perhaps someone is playing a prank on us. Do you really think so?
Well, I don't. Knowing our history with the supernatural, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a spirit of sorts. A banshee, perhaps.
Oh, please. You two are nothing but scaredy cats.
If you're so cocksure, then perhaps you'd like to take the train.
James gulped, realising what he'd gotten himself into. But Rosie was cross.
That Banshee is a real piece of work if they think they could scare my friends. I'll take a mail train tonight, Percy. I started this mess after all, so it's only fair I fix it too. You're so brave, Rosie. But please don't let that ghost hurt you. What if it tries to take you? Then I'll fight back. I survived the war. I'm sure I can survive this. I hope.
Soon night had fallen. Rosie was beginning to have doubts.
Perhaps I haven't made the right decision. What if that Banshee does try to do something to me?
Oh, not you too, James groaned. You have nothing to worry about. There's no such thing as banshees. Without another word, the two left their nice warm berths and set off to collect their respective trains. As they did, the air grew colder, and the sound of metal clanking began to fill the air. James was making good time with the kipper. Despite his apprehension for pulling it, he didn't mind as the starry night distracted him. But it wouldn't be that way for long.
It's the Banshee! Full speed, driver!
James raced down the line at tremendous speed, whistling frantically. Houses' lights began to turn on as disgruntled people came out to see what the commotion was about. Meanwhile, Rosie was doing well with the mail train, though she didn't feel such. Her eyes darted around the line side.
No sign of the engine yet.
Just then the station mistress came up.
We've received reports from the signalman of a light engine up ahead on the line. We'd like you to see what's going on before continuing with your train, but be careful. Yes, ma'am.
Rosie uncoupled from her train and puffed cautiously up the line to see what the problem was. It was dark, and the stars did little to help illuminate her surroundings. She stopped as she looked ahead to see a shape poking through the darkness.
Hello?
Suddenly, there came a sound of clanking as out of the darkness came an engine whistling fit to burst. Rosie screamed in fright as her crew prepared to reverse her, but she stood still.
No, I won't stand for this!
The engine stopped right in front of Rosie.
You've got some nerve terrorising my friends with your clanking and screaming. I won't allow it!
The sound of whispering filled the air, and an echo sounded as if it came from the engine's smoke box.
I'm sorry, my dear. I didn't mean to frighten any of you. That's why I only come out at night.
Rosie suddenly became overcome by an emotion she couldn't explain. Despite the menacing appearance of the engine, it spoke softly, almost as if it was close to tears.
When I sat in the sidings, my brothers and sisters would visit me. They told me that I would soon join them and not to worry. But now here I am, on an island, far away. I've looked everywhere and have called for them, but with no response. I just want to be with them. I miss them.
Rosie was crushed. She puffed closer to the engine.
I can understand what it's like to be separated from those you love, but running around won't help you find them. If you want to be with your siblings, then let me take you to them.
The engine was silent, but Rosie could tell what it meant. She slowly pushed the engine to the scrapyard where it had escaped from. The scrapyard owner was pleased to see her.
You found it, but where was it?
Rosie didn't answer.
Please, sir, won't you scrap this engine now? It's been causing nothing but trouble racing around the island. I think it doesn't realise its time is up.
The manager could see tears in the dog tank's eyes. He didn't question it any further. Rosie pushed the engine to where a crane stood ready to transfer it into the incinerator. There came another chorus of whispers as a waft of air came from the old engine's smoke box.
Thank you.
Rosie stayed quiet after that. She delivered the rest of the mail and returned to the sheds to see a trembling James wide awake.
Rosie, thank Christmas you're okay. Is it gone? Yes, James. They finally found peace. You know, James, I feel sorry for those engines.
Sorry for them? How can you feel sorry for something like them?
Because like any engine, they just want peace after they've passed it. They've been rotting away on the other railway for so many years. Now that we've been contracted to transport them here, perhaps they shall finally get the rest they deserve.
James didn't know what to say after that, so he said nothing. Rosie never did tell anyone what happened that night, and even after the winter months had passed, the engines requested for the scrapyard chains to remain going, much to the surprise of the Fat Controller. There never was another incident such as the one that occurred that night, but now whenever engines are tasked with pulling these trains, they are respectfully silent and make sure the engines get released first, so that they may finally rest in peace.